Hi all, and thanks for being with me. For those of you that do watch my show, or at least keep a track of where I'm at and what I'm producing and criticising what I do, which seems to be a large number of you, you probably have been very disappointed in the last week because I haven't been available. It is regretful that I've had COVID, which has been an enlightening experience to say the least, my second time around, but feeling quite comfortable in the fact that I've had so many jabs I look like a pincushion, and that prevented me from, I suppose, getting the worst of COVID, which is a blessing to say the least, as it wasn't as bad this time as it was last. Last time I had COVID, I was a bit hazy, a bit lethargic to say the least, and had a very foggy thought. Now, me and a foggy thought are probably something that I could say I probably have a lot of the time, but particularly worse when I had COVID the first time. So feeling pretty good right now and quite keen to get back into my regular process, which is about producing videos such as this so that you can criticise them, you can tell me what you actually think of me, which is really enlightening on many, many occasions, and I particularly enjoy being called a wanker. So please continue with your comments, because they are amusing to say the least. I've endeavoured to set this video up a little bit differently. I've been working on trying to develop a better production, which is part of my goal when doing podcasts or video blogs like this, is to try to improve the quality of the production, which is just part of my thing. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. I could probably produce these from my garden and they probably wouldn't make all that much difference, but the technology fascinates me and I like to see what I can do with it. But today I want to talk about an age-old topic, something which has reared its ugly head recently because Lara Tingle chose to, and I made a post about this I think the week before last, but certainly Lara Tingle raised the issue about racism and whether we are a racist country or not. And I have to say, in all honesty, yes, we are. We are about as racist as they come. We don't actually indulge in apartheid as they do in some other countries, particularly in Israel, and where they used to abide by apartheid in South Africa, but have since dispensed with that. So that sort of apartheid division between black and white, or one race and another, doesn't happen here as overtly as it does in other countries. But there's also a blatant covert form of racism here. And the question really is, does racism exist? And if so, how does it present itself? And we just need to look at no further, I guess, than in October last year when the referendum failed, that it is a strong indication that Indigenous people were not going to be able to be given what they were asking for in terms of appropriate recognition and to have a voice to Parliament for whatever reason. But a lot of that was driven by sowing doubt in people's minds about exactly what it was that Indigenous people wanted. And I think my belief is it was actually tapping into some issues around how we viewed Indigenous people. And it sort of took me back to the 1960s when racism was present, when we were trying to abolish the White Australia policy. And, we've had this big history around racism in this country, which it isn't until, I've lived through this as well, isn't until more recent times that we've found a way to at least eradicate legislation that brought about the racism that was prevalent in this country. In fact, in this country, Indigenous people were not even mentioned in the Constitution and certainly didn't have a right to vote. So racism has been present for a long time. The question really is, does it exist today? As I said before, yes, it does, to everybody's excitement. So what does all of this mean then? To me, it means we can have a discussion. We can finally start to talk about this as a mature country and acknowledge where it does exist and what it is that we need to do to change it. Now, one of the highlights, I think, of racism recently has been about anti-Semitic conversations or slurs made, obviously, towards Jewish people. Now that's Jewish people a race? I guess they are. Is it appropriate? No, of course it's not. Anti-Islamic stuff is exactly the same. No, it's not appropriate. But do we engage in it? Yes, we do. We engage in all of those things. And the reason why we engage in them is because we want to be seen as exclusive, as being superior to another race because of their colour or their religion or whatever it might be, as we are also feel that we're superior to people that earn less, that come from a certain postcode. There's this tendency for most of us, it seems, to be able to differentiate ourselves from others because our experiences of life are different to theirs. And I think this is where it starts, but this is where it must end. So it was interesting to see in the ABC did a report. They've got a program called Australia Talks where they do surveys amongst 60,000 people. And it was interesting in this particular survey just to see. So what it says here is 3 in 4 Australians say there is a lot of it here. That there's that the general perception in Australia is that people experience quite a degree of racism. In fact, the prevalence of racism is one of the more widely agreed upon propositions bowled up to the 60,000 Australians. That's the Australia Talks population. So of all of those people, this is one of the most common conversations. So as it says here, even I pay too much tax, muttered only 31% support. But most Australians were pretty sure about the racism. So people are conscious of it, and people are certainly aware of it. So it says here, racist Uncle Dennis isn't just an invention of a stand-up comedian. A solid 61% of respondents confirm that they have a friend, relative, or workmate who tells racist jokes. And I know from my own experience with people they do. And the question we need to be asking also is, why is it that it seems to be acceptable to be able to tell jokes about a specific race? In their survey in Australia Talks, of all respondents, only 20% had personally experienced discrimination on the grounds of an ethnicity. But when you ask Aussies of these are Aussies of non-European ancestry, the response rate is 76% who report being discriminated against. Now, when 76% of the population are saying that they're discriminated against, I would suggest that we have a problem. And I would also suggest that supports Lara Tingle's comments about the fact that we are a racist nation. So what would the percentage need to be to prove that we're not? Would it need to be 10% or 15% or just something less than 50%? 76% is 3/4 of the population believe that racism or discrimination of a person because of race is certainly a problem. So in other words, what Laura said, even though it was kind of off the cuff and is probably something that she's been wrestling with for some time, there is an element of truth in what she has to say. It says here, the main form of discrimination was minor or subtle. And so one of the questions we need to be asking is, if the main focus of discrimination was minor or subtle, 79%, but non-European Australians also reported being subject to racist slurs, 59%. Right, so is it dependent upon its subtlety? So does racism have to be like someone ringing us up and abusing us because of our race? Is it about putting a sign up, holding a sign up? Is it about sending us some messages on social media, racially slurring us? I mean, what is it that is about this subtle version of racism? And my guess is that if it's present at all, if it's presenting in a way which is denigrating another person, however minor that is, then that's an issue. Because you could argue that some people make comments ignorantly, that they don't understand the impact that they have on another person. But let's say Joe Bloggs is of a different colour, and Joe receives a message from a mate which perhaps could be a racist joke or some off-the-cuff comment about his colour, whatever. And if it's a one-off thing, maybe that's not too bad. But if Joe has heard that comment 1,000 times, if he hears other similar comments during his day or during his week, does it compound what was said? Well, it certainly does. So that one off-the-cuff comment could have been the last one he heard of many similar comments over a period of time. For Joe, that could be a significant issue. We don't know, because we don't know what else Joe has heard. So even those innocent comments can turn into something that is quite damaging. And I think we need to be mindful of the language that we use in reference to other people. And it doesn't mean those people have to be in front of us. It means that we're also propagating racism by making racist jokes, by talking about Indigenous people in a derogatory way. And that we need to find ways to be able to change those behaviours so that we aren't adding to the racism that already exists in this country. Let me know what you think in the comments section below, and remember to subscribe to my channel, ring the bells, do all the fancy stuff that you need to do, make whatever comments you need to make. What do you think about racism in Australia? Does racism exist? Do you know of people who have experienced racism? Have you yourself experienced it? Let me know in the comments below. I just need to conclude by saying, if you don't think racism exists in this country, I do wonder what rock you've been hiding under. Because my experience is, by talking to people of different ethnic backgrounds, different religious backgrounds, different socio-economic backgrounds, for many, many years, that they certainly experience it. So the question I'm asking is, if you haven't experienced it, then you're lucky. But the question really is, do you think, though, that just because you may not have experienced it, it doesn't exist? Because it does.